When my mom said, "Plane tickets are so expensive now. If you don't have enough money, just stay home," her voice was light, almost casual, as if she were talking about rain or sunshine. I just nodded, smiled like the good daughter I'd always been. It seemed like the conversation ended there, until my phone buzzed with a dry ping from my banking app. My credit card had just been charged nearly $5,000 for 4 business-class tickets to Hawaii. My name wasn't on the passenger list. But my mom's, dad's, my sister Kayla's, and her perpetually failing husband's names were all there. I remember standing frozen in the bathroom, toothbrush still in my mouth, hands trembling as I opened the app, my heart turning cold. They did it again. Took my money like it was their birthright. No questions, no messages. Not even a thank you. Just like the time I paid for Dad's hospital bills or when I bought Kayla that $600 dress because she was temporarily broke. I locked the card and hit dispute all without hesitation. And whether it was a coincidence or not, an hour later, Kayla texted, "Why haven't the tickets been paid for?" I stared at the message, recalling Mom's dismissive tone, "If you don't have enough money, stay home." So I replied with just 4 words, "What you said." That feeling, it wasn't quite anger, but an awakening. Like I'd just snapped out of a dream I'd mistaken for family all these years. And for the first time in my life, I seriously considered leaving that circle. Not to escape, but to live. Because I swore, if anyone was going to be left behind in this story, it wouldn't be me. I'm a nurse, working 12-hour shifts, sometimes 14 when someone calls out last minute. I come home with swollen feet, aching back, and a head heavy as stone, but I still check my bank account to make sure I can cover my student loans. Once, I'd just taken off blood-stained gloves when Kayla called, her voice soft, "I need $2,500 urgently. Derek got laid off, and we're really struggling." I didn't even think. I transferred the money right away. Just like all the times before, Dad's hospital bills, Mom's supplements, birthday toys for my nephew, I paid for it all. No complaints, and of course, no repayments. I used to think I was helping carry the family's burden. But over time, I started to feel suffocated. Once, when I had a 102-degree fever from pneumonia, I called Mom just to ask her to bring me some porridge. She replied quickly, "I'm watching your nephew so Kayla can get her nails done. You'll manage, okay?" And then she hung up like I was a bother. Then I found out the whole family was planning a trip to Maui. A week-long vacation, business-class tickets, beachfront hotel. No one told me. No invitation, no questions. I only found out because of a photo Kayla posted that popped up in my feed, captioned, "We deserve this. Family getaway before the chaos of life hits again." I stared at that photo for a long time. They were dressed in white, beaming under the sunset. And me? I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria, eating cheap instant noodles after a night shift, still in my blood-stained scrubs. An old colleague passed by, looked at me, and asked, "Why do you look like the whole world's drained you dry?" I gave a weak smile. But at that moment, I didn't know, that question was the first spark of a fire that would soon ignite. Because this time, I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. That day, I just finished a shift that dragged on until 3 a.m. I got home, desperate to crash, when my phone rang, a bank notification, "Your credit card was used to purchase 4 business-class tickets to Maui." I couldn't believe my eyes. I opened the app, saw the airline, the amount, every detail. It was my card. No one asked, no one texted for permission. I stood there, shaking with rage. I texted the family group chat, still trying to stay calm, "Did anyone use my card to buy tickets?" Kayla replied simply, "You always said you wanted us to be comfortable. Economy seats hurt your back after hours." Then she added a smiley emoji. That was the final straw. I didn't feel sad anymore. No disappointment, no hurt like before. Just a cold emptiness. I opened the app, hit dispute all, and locked the card immediately. In the group chat, they started panicking. What are you doing? We'll miss the trip. I replied with one sentence, this time, I'm not flying with you. 3 days later, I booked a ticket, for myself, to Iceland. I didn't tell anyone. Not to escape, but to start over. For the first time in my life, I stood in a freezing field, took a deep breath, and felt free. No burdens, no sense of owing anyone anything. That trip wasn't just about finding myself. It was about reclaiming the self-respect I'd buried for years. And the strangest thing. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty for being happy. What my family didn't know was, while they were scrambling for plane seats, I'd quietly applied for an advanced nursing training program, 70% funded. A colleague believed in me so much she nominated me without me asking. And that was just the beginning. I'd only been out of school for 3 months, barely starting to chip away at my student loans, when Mom called, her voice urgent, sign for a car loan for me, I'll pay it monthly. Trust me. I was 22, still believing family ties could never steer wrong. I signed. I didn't know it was the first, and the start of a long chain of others. My older brother borrowed money to open an auto shop, Kayla asked me to co-sign a credit card to earn travel points, my aunt wanted help with her daughter's tuition. Everyone needed something, everyone promised to pay back. But in the end, all the debts fell on me, and worse, they acted like it was only natural. I worked 2 jobs, days as an ER nurse, nights at a senior care center. Sometimes I cleaned houses on weekends. I hadn't had a proper vacation in 6 years. But every time I refused, even a small amount, the same line came up, you're a nurse, you're not short on cash. Why are you so stingy with your own family? I remember once asking for time off to take an advanced skills course, hoping for a promotion. Mom knew, but that day she called me to babysit so Kayla could go to a party. I said no. She paused, then said, you've probably forgotten how we raised you. I haven't forgotten. But I also haven't forgotten the time I was refused a hug because, your hands are cold, or when I came home exhausted and overheard Mom tell the neighbor, this girl's so weak, she's good for nothing. The only person who ever told me I had worth, was an 85-year-old patient I cared for at night. She'd say, you have hands that soothe pain. It was her, not anyone in my family, who first offered to help fund my advanced nursing certification. A stranger believed in me more than my own flesh and blood. I gritted my teeth, studied, took the exam, and passed. Now I'm the head nurse of the ICU. And when the bank called to say my card was no longer flagged for bad debt from that old loan, I cried. Not out of regret. But because I'd finally cut the invisible chain called family duty. That evening, as I was getting ready for a night shift, there was frantic knocking at my door. Through the curtains, I saw my parents on the porch. Mom wore an old coat, clutching the purse I'd once bought her, while Dad stood with arms crossed, face like stone. I didn't open the door. Not out of hate, but because I knew, if I opened it once, I'd be pulled back into their web of guilt. My phone buzzed non-stop. First message, you've changed. You used to be so obedient. Second, I gave birth to you, and now you won't even open the door. Then, is money more important than your parents? I was no longer the trembling girl who apologized after every refusal. This time, I sat down, opened my laptop, and wrote an invoice. Not because I needed them to pay me back, but because I wanted them to see, I remembered everything. I listed every expense, $1,250 for the car loan I co-signed, $980 for my cousin's tuition, $300 for winter roof repairs, $2,000 for Kayla's wedding fund, plus $3,300 for miscellaneous debts never repaid. Total, $7,830. I sent the invoice via email with one line: "If you truly value family, at least respect my sacrifices." 3 days later, Mom called. Not to apologize. She just said, "Don't think money can buy back family." I stayed silent. But in my heart, I wanted to say, it's because family was so cheap in your eyes that I had to value myself more. I hung up, locked my address from their GPS, and for the first time in years, I felt like I held the key. No longer a puppet. I was writing my own story. After I sent the invoice, the messages from my family shifted from blame to attacks. Mom called me heartless, saying I'd turned disrespectful since moving out. My aunt texted privately, "You're selfish, childish, ungrateful, how dare you talk back to elders." I read it all. Not sad, just tired. They called me cold. But who picked up my cousin from school in the snow? Who worked 2 jobs to cover Grandpa's hospital bills? Who begged the bank for a loan extension when my parents defaulted on their debts? I thought if I tried hard enough, they'd change. They didn't. They didn't want my sacrifices, they just wanted someone to blame. This time, I didn't stay silent. I replied in the family group, "All this time, I never asked for anything, only gave. But I'm tired now. If refusing to enable your mistakes makes me ungrateful, I'll take that title." I knew those words were a slap to their pride. But I felt no guilt. My cousin, the only one who ever took my side, texted privately, "You okay? I know you've carried too much. I'm so proud of you." That message came as I sat alone in an old coffee shop where I used to study for my accounting exam. By then, I'd started a new job, a financial analyst at an international company. Double my old salary. Earned on my own. No one's help. My family once said I was too weak to go far. Now, I don't need their belief. I believe in myself. And I've chosen to live a life with clear boundaries, with family, but without guilt. One Saturday afternoon, I got a text from Marissa, my brother Derek's ex-wife. Just one line: "I think you should know the truth." Attached was a PDF. Curious, I opened it and nearly stopped breathing when I saw bank statements, transfers, and credit card bills, all in Derek's name. Most were from the family's emergency fund. Casino bets. Sports gambling. One night, a withdrawal of over $3,000. I sat motionless. Not because of the money, but because of the pain of realizing everything I'd carried for years was to cover someone else's mistakes. Worse, my parents knew. Marissa said Mom had begged her not to report Derek to the police, promising to pay his debts. And then they turned to me, crying about Grandpa's worsening illness or your brother's unpaid tuition, quietly draining the account I slaved to fill each month. I remembered the times Dad ignored me when I said I had to cancel plans to buy a house because I was broke, or Mom sighing, "A girl shouldn't plan too much." It was all lies. Cold, calculated. That night, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop, sent a notice to stop all financial support to the family, and applied for an international MBA scholarship I'd hesitated on due to finances. And yes, I got it. Fully funded. On enrollment day, as I packed to fly out, Marissa texted again, "Derek doesn't know I sent the documents. But if you need to confront the family, I'll be your witness." I replied, "Thank you. But I don't need them to admit anything. I just need them to stop controlling my life." And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. I once thought staying silent and leaving was enough, that taking back my life meant cutting contact. It wasn't. The more I stayed quiet, the more they thought I was weak. The more they believed they could manipulate me again. Mom's texts came every night, "You're being unfilial." My aunt was blunt, "Why air dirty laundry?" But this time, I didn't delete the messages like before. I printed them. Combined them with Marissa's evidence and statements of every expense I'd covered for 7 years, hospital bills, tuition, bank debts, all of it. I organized the files like I was preparing for a trial where I was both lawyer and witness. Then I sent one copy to HR at Dad's company, one to the financial firm where Derek was chief accountant, and one to every relative who'd advised me to be obedient. Soon, I heard Dad was suspended pending an investigation for misusing company funds. Derek was being audited for, unexplained, money from unknown sources. My family went silent for nearly 2 weeks. Until one evening, Mom called. She didn't cry or apologize, just hissed, "You've destroyed this family." I exhaled softly and said, "No. The family destroyed itself when it chose to exploit me and cover up its wrongs." I hung up. For the first time, I felt I had the power to end it. Not with anger, but with clarity. They could blame me, hate me, but I no longer felt guilty. I felt free. And for the first time, I understood, sometimes, forgiveness begins with a firm no. I don't know how long I cried in my first therapy session. Maybe from the moment the therapist asked, "When was the last time you felt worthy of love?" I couldn't answer. I just sat there, tears streaming like someone had uncorked a bottle sealed tight for years. It felt like I'd spent my life enduring, to the point that when no one was hurting me anymore, felt empty. But little by little, I learned to live again. Not to please others, but for myself. I started quiet mornings with coffee I brewed myself, instead of waking to Mom's berating calls. I kept a journal. I walked around the small lake near my house. And one rainy afternoon, I met David, a man who didn't ask how much I earned or pry into my past, but simply asked, "Are you okay?" That simple question was the first time I felt seen, heard, without conditions. A month later, Mom, whether out of pressure or genuine remorse, transferred back the money I'd paid for her debts. No apology, just a blank transaction. I looked at the amount and decided to donate it all to a scholarship fund for medical students struggling with tuition. Partly because I'd once dreamed of being a nurse, partly because I wanted something good to come from my pain. I used to be the family's walking wallet. Now, I'm the one who sets boundaries, who knows when enough is enough. And the sweetest part. When I look in the mirror, I no longer see a victim. I see a survivor. Someone learning to smile for herself. I met Mom again one Saturday afternoon. The sky wasn't sunny or rainy, just overcast, the kind of weather she'd once call bad luck all day. She sat across from me, neat as ever, wearing the same perfume she used to mask the coldness in her eyes. She didn't ask how I was, didn't mention the years I bent over backward paying their debts, or the time she used my name for a loan and left me to deal with it. Instead, she talked about neighbors, my aunt's impending divorce, then pulled out a check, $7,870. No envelope, no note, no apology. Just placed it on the table, like settling a bill. I looked at her, searching for a crack in that fake calm. But no, she was the same, dodging, deflecting, acting like the money erased everything. I gave a faint smile. Not bitter, not angry. Just a smile, like I finally understood, there'd never be an apology from someone like her. I placed my hand on the check and said slowly, "I don't hate you, Mom. But I don't owe you anything anymore." Her lips twitched, maybe a forced smile, maybe surprise. But I didn't wait for a reaction. I stood up and walked out. That day, I didn't cry. Didn't tremble. I felt light, as if I'd finally stepped out of the loveless house I once called family. And that check. I still have it. Not for the money. But to remind myself, forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's letting go, at the right time, for the right person, and for myself. I moved out of my old apartment on a lightly rainy morning. No one saw me off, no one asked where I was going, no one cared if I was okay. But for the first time in years, I felt true peace. No more midnight calls saying, "Mom's short on cash," no more accusations like, "Your family, how can you be so selfish?" I was used to being their only lifeline. When they overspent and sank into debt, when they failed and blamed the world, they always came back to me. I'm no longer the one taking hits for the family. Instead, I got a job in my field, a small company, but with a trusting boss, respectful colleagues, and most importantly, I get to be myself. I started playing guitar again, something I'd abandoned to work extra for the family. I cook for myself, plan trips, and learn to enjoy the small things I never dared dream of before. One day, a friend said I looked different, like someone who'd escaped an invisible prison. I just smiled. They didn't know, that prison was my family. And the key to my freedom was when I dared say, enough. I used to be the one they leaned on. Now, I stand on my own 2 feet. And no, I'm not looking back.